David Scott jailed for 22 years for the execution of Euan Johnston. Gangland execution cops searched quarry for gun used to shoot Glasgow Hood at traffic lights. He knew too much about drugs, money, and the men who ran Glasgow's heroin empire. On November 15th, 2016, the city slept while a silver Audi waited at a red light in Kinning Park. Inside sat Euan E.J. Johnston, 26, dealer, courier, and key link between Scotland's street crews and Spain's traffickers. His trial was weeks away, and his testimony could have torn open a network worth millions. 3 gunshots stopped that from ever happening. The car rolled forward, headlights still burning. E.J. Johnston didn't make it to court because someone made sure he never would. He wasn't supposed to die that night. At 26, E.J. balanced 2 worlds, family warmth and criminal loyalty, as if they could coexist. He had 2 children, a pregnant partner waiting at home, and a reputation that stretched from Maryhill's street corners to Spain's coastal villas. To police, he was a courier who knew too much about shipments, routes, and names that paid for silence. To his rivals, he was the man who could speak the words that would end them. In Glasgow's underworld, silence is loyalty. Speech is a death sentence. The trial on the horizon wasn't just another court date. It was the potential unraveling of a multi-million-pound heroin network, and everyone in that web knew it. E.J. was out on bail, restless, waiting, and watched. When he drove through Kinning Park that night, he wasn't being followed by chance. He was being erased on schedule. The question that still haunts detectives is simple. Who feared his voice enough to order the hit before he could take the stand? E.J.'s story didn't start in the alleyways of Glasgow. It started in inheritance. His father, Euan Johnston Sr., built a legacy in the shadows long before his son could walk it back. In 2014, police raided a car park and found heroin worth £2 million hidden in vehicles. The larger operation, worth £9 million, linked directly to Johnston Sr., earning him 16 years in prison. That was the family trade: money, muscle, and risk, and the younger Euan picked it up like second nature. The Johnston name carried weight in Maryhill. Locals remembered E.J. as the one who could charm a crowd and settle a deal in the same breath. He smiled easily, dressed well, and moved quietly. But his loyalty was already pledged to bigger players. By his mid-20s, E.J. had slipped into the orbit of Roy Dunsonson, a trafficker running his empire from Benalmádena on Spain's Costa del Sol. Dunsonson's network supplied heroin across the UK through encrypted deals, front businesses, and intimidation. E.J. became the bridge between Glasgow's street crews and the European source that kept them rich. Police had been watching for months. In 2014, a Springburn flat was raided. Inside, 4.5 kilograms of high-purity heroin worth £640,000 and a hydraulic press used for packing bricks. E.J. was there. He and Brian McMahon were arrested and charged. It should have ended there, but he walked out on bail. What followed was the tightening of every net around him. The Dunsonson operation was collapsing. Its leader fled Spain and later surrendered in the Netherlands. E.J. was left exposed, a minor lieutenant with major knowledge. That made him valuable to police and disposable to everyone else. He tried to keep life ordinary. He took his kids to school, visited his partner Danielle Curthers, and pretended the trial date in 2017 didn't exist. But Glasgow's gangs don't forget loose ends. Rumors spread that someone in custody was ready to talk, and E.J.'s name drifted through those whispers more than once. Whether he planned to testify or not didn't matter. In a city built on fear, even the possibility of betrayal was fatal. By November, his fate was already written. That evening unfolded like routine. At 10:46 p.m., EJ and Brian McMahon pulled into the Red Pepper Takeaway on St. Andrews Road for a late meal. They laughed, ordered, waited. Outside, a black Audi Q5 circled the block. It drove past once, then again. Each lap was a clock ticking down. For 40 minutes, the vehicle looped the streets, its driver scanning windows and mirrors, waiting for the moment. CCTV would later show two men step out onto McCulloch Street and watch the takeaway door. They weren't there for food. At 11:39 p.m., EJ and McMahon left the restaurant, climbed into their silver Audi RS4, and drove toward Kinning Park. The Q5 moved behind them, keeping distance, headlights low. The streets were quiet, the rain thin, and every turn led closer to the trap. At the traffic lights where Scotland Street meets Shields Road, the cars stopped side by side. EJ was on the phone with Danielle, her voice soft through the speakers. She heard the pause, the silence before it, and then 3 shots. 2 to the head, 1 to end everything. The silver Audi lurched forward into a bollard as the Q5 sped off through a red light, vanishing into the night. Danielle was still on the line, hearing the chaos as voices shouted and sirens rose. By the time paramedics arrived, EJ was barely alive. At Queen Elizabeth University Hospital, the machine stopped within an hour. He never made it to trial, never spoke a word in court, and took every secret he held to the grave. Police taped off the scene, the blue lights painting the wet streets like a film set. Reporters arrived, neighbors watched from windows, and rumors spun faster than facts. The media called it a gangland execution. Detectives called it a message. In Glasgow, violence is rarely about revenge alone. It's about control. The city had seen it before, the Lyons and the Daniels, the old scores and new alliances. EJ's death fit the pattern of a business decision disguised as murder. Hours later, the black Audi Q5 was found burned out on Brayhead Street. Inside, a bullet casing survived the flames. The shell matched the fragment recovered from EJ's car. It was a clean job gone imperfect. Fire couldn't erase everything. Detectives already had enough to know this was no random attack. Someone had planned it with precision, funded it with money, and executed it with practice. The only question left hanging over the city was the same one that opened the case. Who ordered the silence of Euan Johnston, and why was his truth worth killing for? When the smoke cleared, detectives began the quiet work of reconstruction. The black Audi Q5 was found hours later on Brayhead Street, its frame gutted by fire. A single 9mm shell survived the heat. It matched the bullet fragment lodged in EJ's car. Whoever planned the hit believed fire would erase their trail. It only made the clues sharper. Forensic teams sifted through what was left: ash, melted metal, and fabric. In that wreckage, they found a torn piece of a Nike Windrunner jacket. It was small, no larger than a glove, but it would break the silence the killers left behind. DNA on that fragment led investigators to one name: David Scott, 33 years old, a known player with links to Glasgow's hardest crews. Another man, Anthony Ruffin, moved in the same circles, just as familiar, just as careful. Both had the kind of reputation that made witnesses forget what they saw. Detectives followed digital ghosts, cloned license plates traced to stolen cars, cell tower pings that drew invisible lines through the city. Each piece fit too well to be random. CCTV showed the black Q5 circling the takeaway again and again, its movements too clean for amateurs. The timing, the weapon, the execution. It was military in rhythm, professional in delivery. Yet perfection doesn't exist in real life. The fire hadn't burned hot enough, and a mistake that small is all police ever need. The team built the case layer by layer. The jacket tied Scott to the car. The shell linked the gun to the shooting. The pattern of calls around 10:30 that night connected both men to the same signal cluster near St. Andrews Road. What looked like chaos was really choreography. By late 2017, the file was ready. David Scott was charged with murder. Euan was named as a co-accused. The hit that silenced EJ was finally echoing back toward those who planned it. When the courtroom doors opened in May 2018, the air inside felt colder than winter. Reporters lined the benches, waiting to see the faces behind the execution that haunted Glasgow. David Scott stood silent, square-jawed, unbothered. Across from him, prosecutors mapped out every second of that November night. The looping car, the red light, the bullets. The evidence played like a timeline nobody could deny. The Nike jacket, the DNA, the cloned plates, the charred Audi. It all led to Scott. His co-accused, Anthony Euan, kept his head down. The Crown's key witness, a man named David Callander, stepped forward claiming he had overheard Euan brag about the shooting. His story was brutal in its simplicity. Bang. I nipped that EJ. It was the kind of confession investigators dream about, but the dream didn't last. Under pressure, Callander retracted everything. He said he misunderstood police questions. He said he just wanted the interview to end. The courtroom lost its tension. Euan's charges were dropped. He walked free. Scott didn't. The DNA was immovable. The bullets spoke for themselves. Judge Lady Stacy called it a cold and deliberate execution, not an accident, not a feud, but a choice. She sentenced him to life in prison, with a minimum of 22 years before parole. The courtroom didn't cheer. Nobody ever does when the outcome is built on death. For EJ's family, it was justice written in fragments. They had a name, but not the full story. The driver of the Q5 was never found. The gun was never recovered. The men who funded the hit still moved quietly in the shadows. And Scott, the man who pulled the trigger, was not finished with violence. Inside HMP Edinburgh, whispers moved faster than news. David Scott was a marked man. Inmates whispered that EJ's old associates wanted revenge, and one name kept surfacing: Dale Thomas, a robber with loose ties to Johnston's circle. Scott didn't wait for threats to grow. On December 10th, 2019, he walked into Thomas's cell carrying boiling sugar water and a blade. What followed was described by officers as a scene out of a horror film. He threw the liquid first, watched it stick and burn, then slashed Thomas's face open, carving across his jaw and ear. When guards arrived, Scott only said, "He'll need a doctor." Then he walked away. He was moved to HMP Perth after that, but distance didn't calm him. Weeks later, on December 27th, he attacked again. The target this time was Paul Lyons, a senior figure in Glasgow's Lyons family. Lyons sat with his children in the visiting room when Scott sprinted from behind, razor in hand. He sliced across Lyons' head and neck, shouting accusations of betrayal. The cut missed the artery by inches. Guards pulled him down, but even then, he was smiling. Prison hadn't reformed him. It had just changed the geography of his war. 9 years passed. Glasgow moved on, but the case never closed. In October 2025, a convoy of police vehicles arrived on a lonely embankment near Oban, hours from the city. Officers in high-visibility vests combed through damp soil and tall grass. They were looking for a 9mm pistol, the weapon that ended EJ's life. It was the last missing piece, the one object that could connect the dots between David Scott and whoever paid for the trigger. The case remains open. The weapon may still lie somewhere in the soil, waiting for the day it surfaces and forces every name back into the light. In Glasgow, time doesn't bury crime, it preserves it. And in this city's underworld, silence isn't peace, it's unfinished business. Subscribe for more stories where justice moves slow but never stops.